the whole El Rey Theater incident in 1995, where the brother from Rolling 60s got stomped to death. I think his name was Bo.
Oh, well, I know him as Kelly Jamerson.
Were you out when death row started to build up and Corrupt started?
Not at all. I love Suge to death, but he definitely wouldn't have been moving around LA like that.
The security that was there couldn't do shit.
There's too many people.
It was too many people when it was chairs, bottles, and everything else, glass and everything else thrown in them up.
Then somebody from MC8's side ends up getting killed.
The 60 guy.
Yeah, the Rolling 60s.
Right.
Big U once said, if I had not been locked up, Suge Knight wouldn't have been running the streets the way he did.
Because in LA, at the time, you wasn't seeing blood. You wasn't wearing no red at that time. That wasn't happening. And you definitely weren't moving like that without major situations.
But a lot of people don't really believe he could have checked Suge like that. After all, Suge was no pushover. He rolled with some of the most dangerous dudes around. One example was the brutal murder of a Rolling 60s member, Kelly Jamerson, aka Bod D, which Suge and his crew were allegedly behind.
The melee started between everybody, just the Pyroots and pretty much any Quicks that will get, or any Crips that will get involved. And that's how he got stumped out.
So what really happened that night? Let's get into it. Kelly Jamerson. Kelly Jamerson was born May 29, 1966 and started out on the east side of South Central LA, but eventually moved to the west side, settling right in the heart of Rolling 60s territory. As time went on, he got tight with several members of the 60s and eventually got put onto the set himself. He wasn't just some random face in the neighborhood either. Kelly was well respected, a real solid dude known for being loyal to his hood and his people. Folks say he was a diehard, someone who didn't back down and always showed love to his homies. He even had some ties in the music scene. He was cool with a few well-known artists, including Snoop Dogg. That's where he picked up the nickname Bod D. But all of that came to a tragic end on March 13, 1995. That night, Kelly showed up to an exclusive, invite-only party sponsored by Death Row Records. It was a big night, packed with people, performances, and industry heavyweights. At the time, Death Row was at its peak, and the label was mostly made up of Compton Pyrus. But behind the music and flashy image, there were some deep street tensions bubbling beneath the surface. See, Death Row and a lot of Compton Crips weren't seeing eye to eye, and those street politics started spilling into the industry. DJ Quick, who repped Treetop Pyru, was beefing with MC8, a Compton Tragnew Park Crip. What started as a rap feud wasn't just staying on wax, it was spilling over into real-life violence.
Honestly, to me, this Quick got started over just people's misunderstandings of He was a Blood, I was a Crip. Okay, that was natural.
At that party, members from MC8's crew reportedly showed up and started banging on DJ Quick, which sparked a fight. Things popped off quick. A commotion broke out on the dance floor and chaos took over. People started scrambling, trying to get away, but words were already being exchanged and it was clear something serious was about to go down.
And then now you hear cats throwing up and saying they hoods. So all the homies doing that. Now at the end of the day, everybody in there drinking and all this shit. So it went haywire.
Right in the middle of that chaos was Bod D. He somehow ended up caught in the madness, and what happened next was nothing short of brutal. He was jumped, beaten with chairs, bottles, and stomped out by a mob of people.
The melee started between everybody, just the Pyroots and pretty much any Quicks that will get, or any Crips that will get involved. And that's how he got stumped out.
Some eyewitnesses claim Suge Knight was right there watching it all unfold, and even worse, they say he encouraged it. One witness said Suge yelled out, "Y'all get that dude," while Kelly was being attacked. Now, how Kelly ended up in the mix is still debated. One story says he came with MC8's crew and got caught up in the fight alongside them. Another theory suggests that when Kelly saw Crips getting jumped by Pyrus, he jumped in to help, trying to back up his people. But according to some, the folks he was helping bailed when things got hectic, leaving Kelly all by himself, surrounded and outnumbered.
But that guy wouldn't have got stumped out like that if the other cats, whoever was with him, didn't run. Because they was fighting.
Yeah, they were fighting.
And if them other cats wouldn't have left.
They say around 8 to 10 people were on him, stopping him out as he tried to get up and make it to the front door. Chairs were thrown, bottles shattered, and someone even stabbed him during the chaos. He was reportedly dragged and beaten all over the theater floor. Witnesses say Kelly was bleeding badly, trying to crawl to the entrance, and finally collapsed near the front door. One woman who saw the whole thing but didn't want to give her name said there were so many people hitting him that no one even thought to help. She later saw his body lying near the front entrance, lifeless. In the aftermath, Death Row's reps tried to distance themselves from the situation. They claimed the incident wasn't connected to any of their artists. In fact, they even said Kelly wasn't on the guest list. But Kelly's family pushed back on that. They said he was invited, brought in by a friend, and that he knew the DJ spinning at the party that night. After Kelly Jamerson's brutal death, there was a heavy wave of backlash aimed at Death Row Records and Suge Knight. A lot of people felt like at best, Suge was negligent, and at worst, he might have played a role in what went down. The whispers and accusations didn't stop, and people started holding not just Suge accountable, but also pointing fingers at DJ Quick too, since his name had been tied to the whole beef that led to the party fight. DJ Quick would end up speaking on it years later, dropping some lines about that night in his song, Use a Gangsta. In the track, he raps, like, I used to have a beef with this cat named 8, and his homies approached me at the club El Rey. What was I to do? I'm on stage and I'm doing my thing. And this dude's out in the crowd trying to who bang. Giving it up for his homies and set tripping too, but he wasn't from rolling 60s, more like Trag knew.
Like I used to have a beef with this cat named 8, and his homies approached me at the club El Rey.
He also touched on the rumors people were spreading about him, accusing him of getting someone killed. Toward the end of the track, he takes a more somber tone and gives a shout out to Kelly, saying, it's also dedicated to the little homie from 60s that lost his life at that party. As for Suge Knight, he did what Suge always seemed to do when drama hit. He threw money at the problem. Just like with other situations linked to Death Row, the label and Suge found a way to slide out of serious consequences. They reportedly settled the situation out of court with Kelly Jamerson's family. Suge Knight versus Big U. Because of all this, some people started clowning Big U whenever he claimed he could have kept Suge Knight in check if he hadn't been locked up. In their eyes, Suge was moving way too heavy for even Big U to stop. Big U had said that Suge and his crew only had that kind of power because of the unity that came after the LA riots, how different hoods started linking up, and it gave Suge more freedom to move around unchecked. But a lot of people believe it would have been the other way around if Big U had been out. They argue that Suge Knight was way too connected, too ruthless, and had too many killers around him, and if anything, Big U might have been the one getting checked, or at least it would have turned into a major power struggle. Big U had the strength of the Rollin' 60s behind him, no doubt, that's a serious set, but Suge had a different kind of army. Death Row was like a street battalion in disguise. Suge's entourage. He had the mob Pyrus working inside the label, and a lot of those dudes weren't just security, they were known hitters. One of the deadliest was Wardell Poochie Faust, a name that still rings out in LA to this day for his alleged involvement in high-profile hits. As Danny Boy once described him, he definitely was a killer. He looked like it. He acted like it when he came in the room. It was something about him. He wasn't a tall man, he wasn't big, nothing like that. To me, he looked like that he wasn't the one to F with.
Do I believe that man was a killer? Hell yeah. I'll answer that. He definitely was a killer. He looked like it. He acted like it. You kind of felt it when he came in the room.
And he wasn't wrong. In fact, there's long been speculation that Poochie was the one who murdered Biggie, allegedly as retaliation for Tupac's death.
So you're saying that Suge told Poochie to kill Biggie?
Indirectly.
Vanilla Ice. Another person who felt the wrath of Suge Knight was none other than Vanilla Ice. This beef allegedly escalated to a point where Suge dangled the rapper from a balcony, threatening to kill him. The whole situation was rooted in a dispute over songwriting credits, specifically involving Mario Johnson, a singer and songwriter who worked with Vanilla Ice. When Ice's Hooked album dropped, Johnson had helped pen a lot of the songs. Although he was credited, Vanilla Ice's team never paid him and started ignoring his calls. In the 2015 book, Welcome to Death Row, The Uncensored History of the Rise and Fall of Death Row Records, Johnson recalls the moment he realized how big of a deal this lawsuit could be. I remember being at Vanilla Ice's attorney's office. I found out his album had 2 million pre-orders before it was released, so I knew we had a big record. Suge didn't know how to handle a big potential lawsuit like that, a record of 6-7 million at the low end, Johnson explained. Suge's frustration reached a boiling point. At first, the attorney suggested they could settle by paying a small amount, but this only made Suge more furious. He didn't want to let it slide that easily, so Suge demanded to speak to Vanilla Ice directly. Johnson shared how Suge and his crew tracked Vanilla Ice down. We knew where Vanilla Ice was staying because I was supposed to be hearing some tracks he was doing. He wanted me to come by myself, but Suge said, "I'm going with you," and that's when the notorious encounter went down. Vanilla Ice himself recounted the story in the book, saying, "I went to my hotel room and Suge was in there with several people. He let me know he wanted to get some points off the record Ice Ice Baby. Suge took me out on the balcony and started talking to me personally. He had me look over the edge, showing me how high I was up there. I needed to wear a diaper that day. I was an investor in Death Row Records with no return on my money." However, Vanilla Ice went on to clarify, "He didn't hang me off from any balcony, okay? The story's been kind of blown out of proportion, and I want to clarify that Suge and I have no bad feelings towards each other."
The story that has been told is that I was hung over a balcony, which has never happened. He didn't hang me over the balcony. He took me to the balcony to talk to me. I got it. You don't have to hang me over. I didn't want to question that or test that water, so to speak.
Despite Ice's attempts to downplay the situation, people still question the story. Even though Suge may not have actually hung him off the balcony, it's hard to ignore the fact that Vanilla Ice was forced to look down from a height where the threat of harm felt very real. Why would Suge take him up there in the first place if not to intimidate him? But this wasn't the only time Suge allegedly resorted to violence. In 1992, Knight was accused of assaulting 2 aspiring rappers at a Hollywood studio. According to reports, he forced them to their knees, fired a shot near them, and pistol whipped one of them. Suge and his Mexican goons. Suge also had ties to some serious Mexican muscle too. Back in 2017, Mr. Capone, who's known to be a top figure tied to the Mexican gang, sat down and shared a wild story about how Suge Knight used them to press Lil Wayne. According to Capone, at the time, he respected Suge. He saw him as this real-life gangster who was trying to put money into the music scene and push gangster rap forward.
I kind of looked up to Suge Knight in a way when I first heard about Suge Knight and looked at his story. I'm thinking Suge Knight's just a gangster. He's just a gangster that wanted to put his money into the music game, and he's doing good and he's helping out the gangster rap.
So when Suge reached out, Capone was down to work with him. One day, a friend hits up Capone and tells him Suge wants to link up. So Capone pulls up with his guys to meet Suge Knight in person. And Suge, being Suge, starts gassing them up, talking that LA street talk, telling them how he runs the city, how they run the city, and how any artist who touches down in LA needs to check in with him first. He had these dudes hyped. They were ready to ride for whatever.
Telling us some real street essays are deep in LA. They're running the jail. They are the streets. He's like, check us out. We run LA. We need to let everybody know that they come to LA, they with us. I'm Suge Knight, you're Capone, we could take over, blah, blah, blah. So I'm with it. I'm like, that sounds like a plan.
Then, right in the middle of this meeting, Suge gets a phone call. Someone tips him off that Lil Wayne is in LA, recording at a studio. That's when Suge switches gears and tells Capone and his crew that they should slide over there and let Wayne know who's really in charge. Basically, it was time to make Wayne check in.
Then he goes, look, Lil Wayne's out here. Lil Wayne's in our territory. And that's when Lil Wayne was popping, you know? He's like, he needs to bow down to you guys. Like, he's telling it an ARF thing. He needs to bow down to you guys.
So they roll out to the studio, ready to flex a little muscle. When they pull up, Suge tells Capone and his boys to head inside and let Wayne know he wants to have a word. They walk in and Lil Wayne security steps out to see what's up. Capone and his guys explain that Suge Knight is outside and he wants to speak to Wayne. The security goes back inside to relay the message, and a few minutes later, someone comes back out and asks if Suge himself can come in.
So Suge Knight gets out of the car, he goes, look, here's my plan. You guys go push up in the studio. You go knock on the door and start saying you want to talk to Lil Wayne and say Suge Knight's outside. We go to the door, start knocking, security comes out like, what's cracking? We need to see Lil Wayne. Suge Knight's outside. What's up, homies?
Now here's where things get shady. Capone and his crew were thinking, cool, we're going in with Suge. We're about to build something, music, business, maybe even some real industry moves. But Suge turns to them and says, nah, y'all wait out here. Then he walks into the studio alone.
Suge says, do me a favor, guys, just stay out here, chill. So we're like, all right, cool. He goes in there, talks with Lil Wayne. We're outside waiting, we're looking at security, security's looking at us. Like, you know, we're just like, you know, looks like tension could pop off, we're ready to pop it off if something goes on.
They wait, and eventually Suge comes back out and basically brushes them off like, all right, I'll catch y'all tomorrow. And just like that, he dips. Capone and his people were left standing there confused like, what just happened?
He's like, all right, guys, I'm out of here. We're like, what's cracking? He's like, just chop it up tomorrow. He gets in the car, takes off. We're like, the f did we just do?
That's where it hit him. Suge had just used them to apply pressure on Wayne, to make it look like he was rolling deep with some heavy street backing, but it was never about putting Capone and them on or doing business. He used their presence to shake Wayne up, then bounced once he got what he wanted. Eminem and 50 Cent. Even though Suge basically manipulated this group of Mexicans to do his dirty work, it wasn't the only time he used them to scare people. He's pulled the same move before, like with Eminem and 50 Cent. It all goes back to Dr. Dre leaving Death Row Records. When Dre signed Eminem and later brought 50 Cent into the fold, Suge already had bad blood with Dre, so when Eminem and 50 started making serious waves in the industry, they basically inherited Dre's beef with Suge. And Suge being Suge, he wasn't about to let it slide. He tried messing with him on multiple occasions. Take for example the time when 50 Cent was filming the music video for In Da Club. Out of nowhere, someone yelled, "Suge Knight is here." That single sentence threw the entire set into chaos. Suge showed up with about 30 men, reportedly members of a Mexican gang.
So Suge came, he had some Mexican. Now we from New York. You ain't never seen a with a tattoo on his forehead. 118th Street crew. I'm like, what the tattoo on his face, homie?
Then there was the madness at the 2004 Vibe Awards. That night was supposed to be a celebration. Dr. Dre was being honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Snoop Dogg and Quincy Jones were on stage ready to present it to him. But just as Dre was getting ready to accept the award, chaos broke out. A man named Jimmy James Johnson walked up to Dre like he wanted an autograph. Instead, he sucker punched him right there in front of everybody. What followed was straight up mayhem. The punch triggered an all-out brawl. People in the audience started screaming, chairs were being thrown, and about 1,000 attendees rushed for the exits. Right in the middle of it all was young Buck. Reports say Buck had a knife and was seen swinging it during the fight. It was later confirmed that he stabbed Johnson, supposedly in defense of Dre.
Suddenly, you could see a shiny knife in his right hand. Police say that is 23-year-old young Buck, who then vanished.
Buck wasn't the only one who went after Johnson either. He was attacked by multiple people during the melee. The whole thing sparked a serious legal situation. Arrest warrants were issued, and Buck found himself facing charges. While nobody could say for certain if Suge Knight was behind the setup, there were definitely a lot of suspicious signs. According to Tony Yayo, not long after the chaos erupted, he saw Suge Knight and Irv Gotti walking past the G-Unit trailer. That alone was enough to raise red flags. It looked like something was brewing.
I wouldn't say we were scared, but it was the Vibe Awards when we seen Suge Knight and Irv Gotti, and they walked past the trailer.
50 Cent didn't waste time taking precautions. As soon as he caught wind of what might be going down, he reportedly told his people to go out and buy a bunch of knives, just in case things went left. And clearly, he wasn't wrong to be cautious.
50 just look at James Cruz, so he just taps James Cruz and say, "Yo, go buy 20 knives." Yeah, just go to the hardware store. It was about 20 to 15 of us, something like that. Suge Knight got like some crazy looking Compton looking dudes with him, you know what I'm saying? So it just, you felt the energy, like you felt something was gonna go down. And that's when one of the dudes pops on Dre falls, and it just got crazy. Knives started coming from everywhere, and that's when, one of the dudes got stabbed.
In the end, young Buck was hit with 3 years of probation and had to do 80 hours of community service for his involvement in the situation. But at the end of the day, both Suge Knight and Big U were real forces to be reckoned with in their time. They were both straight-up terrors in their own lanes. After Big U's arrest, more and more stories started surfacing about the wild stuff he and his crew were involved in, everything from extortion to kidnappings and even murder. Now with both of them behind bars, a lot of folks see it as a good thing. It's like a chapter closed. They did enough damage and stirred up enough chaos.